Hello everyone, welcome to Payment Tech Media. In this video we will talk about how to install DHCP role on a server. So previously we already installed VirtualBox hypervisor applications. We created two virtual machines, one of them Windows 10 and the other one Server 2019, already promoted to be a domain controller, and DNS also installed. So here, as you can see, this is our Windows 10 and this is our server. Let's go full screen on a server. We can use the right side control plus F. Key combination, right control, or basically host F, which is control, right control plus F. Switch, going full screen. And then we can use server manager. If we click start server manager, and then we can add role. Okay, and then we can click next. This is a role-based installation. Next, our server is already selected. Next, on this window, we want to make sure DHCP is selected. Click DHCP Server, and then click add features. And then click next, next, and install. Okay, installation finished. We can click close. Now we need to configure the DHCP. So let's click this explanation and then click complete DHCP configuration. So click next. And because we are installing DHCP role on a domain controller, we have to commit already the user account for the credentials selected. Click commit. And then click close. So also we need to keep in mind, anytime when we are installing a DHCP role on a server, that server must have a static IP address. This is a domain controller, so already has a static IP address. Let's take a look. Right click network connection status icon, open network connection. Scroll down, network and sharing center. Change adapter settings. Our network adapter, right click properties. Internet Protocol version 4 properties. We can see it's already using static IP address. Cancel, cancel, and close the windows. Also here on local server, on server manager window, here we can see Ethernet using static IP address. Next, we have to configure the DHCP. So in server manager window, by clicking tools and then DHCP, let's minimize server manager window. Let's expand our server. So under IP version 4, we can right click and create new scope. Let's say this scope is for the HR department. So let's call it HR for our human resource department. Next, starting IP address 192.168.1. We know 1.19 it's used for the server, 1.10 used for our Windows 10 virtual machine. So we can say 50 and then end 192.168.1. let's say 59, and using default subnet mask for class C. This is 192 network, that's a class C network. 255.255.255.0, that's a default subnet mask for class C IP address. Let's click next. And here, if we want to add any IP exclusions, so excluding any IP address in this pool, let's say the first one, 192.168.1.50, and end 192.168.1.50. Add, let's say we have a printer, and this printer will use 192.168.150 static IP address, so we don't want 192.168.150 assigned to any other computer, so we can exclude this IP address. Next, so here basically it says for the least duration time. Now, depending on the case scenario, for example, let's say if we are in a case that we don't move the computers, let's say if it's a lab and computers will stay there, we can say, let's say 360 days, don't change, don't expire the IP addresses. By default, it's 8 days, as we can see here. But let's say if it's a scenario where we have, it's an auditorium, we have a day seminar, then we have afternoon seminars, and then we have night seminars, and then basically users, audience bringing their own devices and receiving IP addresses, and we have only, let's say, 20 IP addresses available. So then in that case, we can change 0, and then hours we can say, let's say 4 hours. So for the day session, after 4 hours, the IP addresses will expire. We'll go back to the pool for the afternoon session or for the night sessions. And but in our case, this is just video demonstration in installing DHCP. Let's leave it default 8 days. Next. And if you want to configure the DNS default gateway information, yes. Next. So the default gateway, well, this is intranet, internal networking, and we are not accessing internet. But if you had any default gateway, we would just simply add it here. Let's say 192.168.1.1. Add. If this is, let's say, our router IP address, usually router IP address is our default gateway address. We are going through the router to access different network. Next, and for the DNS, because we are installing DHCP and configuring DHCP Scope on the domain controller, which is already a DNS server, automatically it did include DNS address. So DNS address already added. Next. We are not using any NetBEUI or NetBIOS naming conventions, so we can just simply click next. And yeah, let's go and activate this scope right now. Next and finish. So this scope is activated and we should have a green check mark. We might need to refresh, right click, refresh, as we can see here. Okay, so well, let's go ahead and exit from full screen. Let's go to our Windows 10. And this is our Windows 10 virtual machine. Let's double check and see pa.cpl. Actually, first let's go to cmd command prompt and type ipconfig all. So here we are using a static IP address. As we can see, DHCP enabled, no. And we are using this IP address. But we want to change it to dynamic IP address to obtain IP address from DHCP server. And testing connectivity, ping 192.168.1.19, and I do have connection to the server, so I should receive the IP address from DHCP server. Let's go ahead, open up network connections window, ncpa.cpl, right click properties, and we want to change this to IP version 4, Internet Protocol version 4, highlighted, and then click properties. We want to change it to obtain. OK, and then close. So as we can see here, quickly it did go through the process of DORA, discover, offer, request, and acknowledge. It did receive IP address. So if I press up arrow, up arrow, up arrow one more time, now DHCP enabled, yes. What IP address did I receive? 192.168.1.51, the first available IP address in the pool. 192.168.1.50, we said exclude that from the pool, right? So 51. It did assign to this computer asking. Now let's see if we can ping the server. So let's see, I had it in the history. So ping 192.168.1.19. As we can see, we can ping. So this also did provide the DNS information, correct? So DHCP server and the DNS. So I should be able to ping the server by name. Ping, and the server name is server DC. Enter. So as we can see, it's pinging by name as well, because the DHCP did provide the additional information, default gateway information, DNS information, all that. So if I go to this other server, let's minimize all the other windows. So here, this is our server. Let's go full screen, Control F. And okay, so if I refresh, let's refresh. Okay, so scope, address list, here we can see under address list we can see which computer automatically, in this case PC1, it's releasing this IP address. So this is just one scope creating, we can create multiple scopes, right click, create another scope. And let's say if this scope is for, let's say, marketing department, sales department, and assigning different range of IP addresses. And we can, if we are not using this scope, we can temporarily deactivate and or delete this scope if we are not using it at all. And here we do have also the option of reservation, simply in the same scope, let's say the HR scope, as I mentioned, for the printer, or let's say if we want to use the DHCP to assign IP address to our network printer, we can just simply use the reservation. So reservation, right click, new reservation, and typing, let's say, HR printer. and then what IP address, let's say 192.168.1.50, and we have to type the MAC address of the printer. So if any other device is asking for IP address, it will verify if the MAC address is the MAC address of the network printer, then it will assign this IP address. So how do we get the MAC address of a printer? Simply using the menu in the print device, going to the print device, settings menu, and then information or print network information, or through the menu be able to see the MAC address and typing the MAC address here, and then click add. But I'm going to click close. So that's mainly for the reservation and so on. So this was a quick overview of how to install a DHCP role and testing the connectivity to see if our computer is receiving IP address, which we can see our client's virtual machine. It's already on obtain IP address and it's receiving IP address from DHCP server. If we want to go back to static ncpa.cpl and then right click properties, changing IP version 4 to use the following IP address, static IP address 192.168.1.10, and for the DNS information 192.168.1.19, that's the server IP address, and the server is our DNS server, because the DNS role is installed on the server. That's why we are using 192.168.1.19. This is the IP address of a server. Okay, so let's click OK and close. What we can do, we can go to the server and deactivate. Let's go full screen. So again, how can we access the DHCP? Simply click Start Server Manager. It will open Server Manager window. Click Tools and then go into the DHCP. And then from here, we can just simply expand our server, expand. Let's maximize the window. And then the scope, we can see the HR scope, right click and deactivate. So we can see this red arrow, now it's deactivated. Let's close. So again, quick overview of how to install DHCP and how to configure a DHCP role. Thanks for watching. If you have any question, leave it in the comment section. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up. And to see more tech videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks again and have a good day.